Get ready for the world's greatest Arsenal podcast. Welcome to another podcast by Guns and Yellow Ribbons. Enjoy the show.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Guns and Yellow Ribbons. My name is Fergus. I am your host. I'm joined today by my old sidekick, my mate, Gooner Trev. I'm also joined by, from the Gooner Fanzine, journo Dan Mountney from the Gooner Fanzine, who's been on here several times before. And we're going to just talk about the fallout of the transfer window and what our hopes are for the remainder of the season. Dan, welcome to the show. How are you?
I'm all good. Thanks for having me. It's been a while. Good to be back.
Yeah, it is good to be back. Good Christmas, New Year. Everyone's fit and healthy and everything?
All good. All good.
That's good. That's good. Haven't had a haircut yet, Trev?
No, not yet, mate. It ain't happening yet. It's nice in the cold weather. I've never felt so cosy, mate. Sorry, I was looking away then when we first came on. I've not had a chance to do much homework today, so I was catching up. Looking forward to tonight, Fergus. It's been a very interesting week to be a fan, or in some people's case, a supposed fan of our great football club. And it's going to be interesting talking about it and getting other people's views as well, because there's right and there's wrong, and there's just opinions, you know. Nobody's right, nobody's wrong. We all have opinions. So let's get going, mate. Let's get stuck in. Looking forward to it.
Well, I have, this is, the idea of this one is to have a phone in, and I have made the link just live. So if you want to go to gunsandyellowribbons.com and click on join the show, or just to go to gunsandyellowribbons.com/show, it will bring you through to us and you'll go into the green room. If you're using your phone, have it on landscape. It just looks a little bit better. And if you've got some earphones in so we can hear you clearly and you can hear us, that's also good. Expecting a couple of guests to join us who said they were hoping they're going to join us throughout the day. We're going to be here for about an hour or so. So we'd love to know your thoughts. First and foremost, what we're going to talk about is, well, Dan, can you rate out of 1 to 10 how you see this window? And I know everyone's done it, but it's a hard one to do. But what's your thoughts on the window?
I'm going to give it a 5. I don't think it was good, and I don't think it was bad. I think it was. Trev clearly disagreed with me already. I think we've done well to ship out the players that we have done. I think a lot of people are obviously panicking about the lack of players within the squad now. But if you look at the appearances of the players that have gone, they've not really played this season. I don't think it's going to impact us unless we were to have, a freak injury crisis, for example. As for the incomings, I think people are obviously keen for us to get a striker in, understandably. But you've also got to look at it that it's January. If you make a panic buy in January and it goes wrong and it's an expensive one, say if they'd have paid Isak's £75 million release clause and that hadn't worked out, then that's 75 million down the drain, essentially. I think January is not the time to make big money signings like that, because often, as we've seen in the past, it's gone wrong.
Trev, you shook your head at Dan's 5 rating. Any reason why?
Yeah, I thought we were worth a little bit more than that, Fergus. Not a lot more. I'd go for like 7, I'd go for like a 7, because I think that all the signs were there for it being possibly being a good transfer window. And then I think because of the business that didn't happen as much as did happen, I think that actually improves our score, Ferg. Like Dan just said, we were after a striker. So obviously Arsenal were after a striker. That was common knowledge. But they couldn't get what they wanted. So instead of buying, players that are not up to the standard that we have done in recent years that we get lumbered with, they've said, no, well, if we can't get what we want, we're not buying what we want. If we can't get better, we're not buying. And so they get praise for that from me. They get massive praise for that from me. And every player that's left the club, as Dan, that's twice in a minute, I've agreed with Dan. Dan rightly said, everybody's left that hasn't been getting a game. I was a bit surprised that 1 or 2 left, bearing in mind the size of our squad and the backup we might need. But I'm not surprised that any of them went because of their football ability and what they've shown on the football field, mate.
Trev, do you think? Sorry to jump in, but Trev, do you think that it's kind of shown a bit of progress in terms of what we're doing as well? I think in previous windows we would have seen, maybe panic buys. and I know Edu and Arteta get a lot of stick for what they've done, what they've not done this month. But I think it shows, a good progress in terms of being sensible with recruitment, having a strategy, and sticking to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely, mate. They've got a plan. They've obviously got a plan. They've not managed to get who they wanted. They weren't going elsewhere because they thought, it's right what we say. We've got no European football. We've got no cup football. We've got the league games to get through. We've got a few extra ones. But unless we have a major injury catastrophe, and I mean a major injury catastrophe, what we've done isn't going to make our team any weaker, because the players that have been playing every week are still at the club. Yeah. The ones we've got that have gone are the ones that would come in as backup. And to be honest, I can't comment because I don't watch them enough, but who's not to say that below what we've got rid of in the under 23s or the under 21s, there's not more that could come in and do as equal a job. Not an ideal transfer window. We wanted a striker, I think, but we didn't get him. And that's a benefit. I think I'm actually in praise of Arteta and Edu. You can't get what you want. Don't take anyone.
Trevor, as we said, this is a phone-in one that we want to get some more watchers and listeners looking. We got all the way from LA. Lawrence, how are you doing? Hope you're well. What time of the day in the world is it over where you are right now?
It's just gone 11:35 in the morning.
And it's hot, I bet.
I wouldn't say hot, mild. It's a bit windy outside. Okay.
So I asked the guys, and we've got a couple of other guys waiting as well, so we won't keep you for ages, but I asked the guys how you would rate this transfer window. How would you rate this transfer window?
To be honest, Fergus, 0. Not impressed whatsoever.
And why is that?
No, we've signed 2 players from America who are not going to join us until the start of next season. I watched one of them play in the USA-Canada World Cup on Sunday, the goalkeeper, Matt Turner. And his distribution is 10 times worse than Bernd Leno.
Oh, Christ.
Yeah. And this other guy we signed, Trusty, I've never heard of him before. And now I understand why Arteta went out to Colorado a couple of weeks ago. And I've just heard today that.
As we're starting to say now, we trust you the process, and we're hoping Trusty's not so rusty when he gets to us, So.
Yeah.
Lawrence.
And
Lawrence, hello, mate. It's Hills here, Lawrence. How are you, mate? Nice to meet you, mate. Mate, how old is this goalkeeper that we've signed? Is he like a teenager or?
No, he's 23, 24. Oh,
no,
sorry.
Matt Turner's 27.
27.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So yeah.
But his distribution in the game at the weekend against Canada was just bloody awful. So
one last question.
One
last question for you, Lawrence. If you were looking at the 6 players, like there was 13 players that went out this window, and lots of loanees and stuff like that, and a lot of youth players, but 6 key players went out, and most of us would probably say that there were the 6 players that we wanted to leave the squad. Of those 6 players, would you have actually wanted to keep any of them? And if you didn't, well, then it's not bad news, is it? Really, if they're people you wanted to go.
Yeah, but I mean, some of the players we got rid of, Maitland-Niles, Callum Chambers. I'm still trying to wrap my head around why we got rid of those players, because we need cover.
Do we need cover? We've got 17 games all season.
Well, you never know. I mean, we can have a player get a serious injury, and we need backup.
Yeah,
I mean,
okay,
if you think we're going to keep all those players healthy between now and the end of the season, it's not going to happen. Someone's going to pick up an injury, and we need someone who can step into their place immediately. I mean, I was really surprised about Chambers going. And as I was about to say, a mate of mine's just texted me saying we've just brought Jack Wilshere back.
Well, I don't know if it's been confirmed with Jack Wilshere, but that it's a topic that we're probably going to touch on a bit later on. But it's an option, isn't it? I suppose. Listen, Lawrence, thank you very much. Go on, second.
Just before you let Lawrence go, mate, if you don't mind, because it's interesting. Because Lawrence, I don't necessarily agree with Lawrence's point about the cover, but it is a valid point. It's a really valid point because, as I just said, if we have a bad run with injuries, then we're going to get in trouble. So they have took a bit of a chance. Lawrence, just before you go, mate, I'm just curious. You're out in America. That's obviously a bit of an English accent you got, mate. What do you get up to there? Then what do you do out there?
I work for a real estate company in North Hollywood. You know, we've been hit pretty bad by COVID. You know, I have to work from home, which is pretty hard. But you know, the boss doesn't want anyone in the office until things change. So that's what I do out there.
Have you been out there a long time? Have you been out there a long time?
Yeah. I've been out here for 30 years.
Oh, blimey. Well, look, you know, you said you're in Hollywood, mate. So if you need a good-looking star out there anytime, just shout me up. I'm ready to go.
I'm mates with Steven Spielberg. I'll drop him your phone number.
I'll await the call. Thanks,
no, Trev, he's probably already got his number. Thank you very much for joining. Have a good one, and let's hope the season works out okay for us. And I'm sure you'll jump on again soon. We're going to do these periodically, so I'd love to have you back on again, Lawrence. Thank you. Cheers.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks a lot.
Bye.
You're welcome, mate.
We have somebody else in the green room waiting for us. It's a chap called Matt Pollard. Sorry, I'm awful with my pronunciations. I'm Irish and dyslexic and everything else. Matt, introduce yourself and welcome to the show.
Hi, lads. My name is Matt Pollard. I do the premier Colorado Rapids podcast called Holding the High Line with Rabbi and Red. My co-host is a rabbi. I'm Red, obviously, if that wasn't obvious, and I've been covering the Colorado Rapids since 2016 from the press box, and we've now seen the club and MLS in general start to enter the international market. Lots of Americans abroad. It was a big selling window for the club, and obviously excited to be here and talk about probably the biggest move in terms of the club the player is going to in Rapids history.
So, Austin Levi Josiah Trusty.
Yes.
A professional player, a defender who plays for the MLS team, the Colorado Rapids. Stan Kroenke's team, which we'll be interested in to know your opinion and view on Stan as well. He's on loan from Arsenal, now because we've lent him back until the end of the season. He's meant to come over here in the summer, I believe. Tell us a bit about Rusty Trusty, as we've already nicknamed him.
Well, we refer to call him Os the Boss, which is his Twitter handle. So hopefully he's not too rusty when he arrives in North London in late July. But he's 23-year-old center back. He was a well-regarded prospect coming out of the Philadelphia Youth Academy that recently has produced a lot of products. The Aronson brothers, one of whom's potentially or was almost on his way to Leeds, and then Mark McKenzie, who actually unseated Trusty in the first team their first couple of years there, who's now with Gent. I'm not sure how to pronounce the name of the Belgian club and everything. I think he's got all the physical attributes that you would want in a center back. It just wasn't really working at the time with Philadelphia Union, and he needed a new opportunity. Colorado Rapids swooped in, got him for a decent in-market fee within the league as well, and gave him an opportunity. Robin Fraser is a former center back and regarded as one of the best center backs in the old order of Major League Soccer, and has done a really good job developing defenders. And Austin Trusty's been proof that you should trusty the process in that regard. He's improved almost every single aspect of his game. Still has a little bit of work to do in terms of playing out of the back, but in terms of 1v1 defender, physical attributes and everything, he's become a fantastic MLS defender. I don't know that there was an opportunity for him to get into the World Cup squad. He is a part of the group that's now back in Minneapolis and will be taking on Honduras tonight or tomorrow morning for U3. But certainly, a player who is going to be looked at for the future of the U.S. men's national team, certainly one of the best American defenders in MLS, and now is getting a fantastic opportunity and a fantastic challenge.
Can he make it?
Can he make it?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Before I open the floor and ask Dan and Trev to ask you questions, do you think he can make the grade of the Premier League? And that's what Trev was going to say. So answer Trevor. Answer Trevor. And then Dan, you can ask your question.
Yeah, Trev, I don't know yet. No American defender or center back has ever made this kind of leap before. When you've seen a center back really, entrench themselves in a Premier League team, it's either been on a championship club that's then fighting for promotion. We look back at, Carlos Bocanegra with his time at Fulham, and Fulham was at a very different place from, what I think obviously Arsenal's hoping to do with Arteta over the next 18 months or so. So the answer to the question, I don't know. I don't think that he's ready to play in the Premier League this coming 2022-2023 season. I think if you asked him, if he was moving to Arsenal right now and they were looking to find a loan spot, I think there's an upper mid-table championship club that would find a lot of uses for him. I think based on his style of play and how the Rapids have been more of a pressing team, that he'd fit in at an Eredivisie club. I don't know necessarily that he's going to end up on Loan Brigade FC like a lot of Chelsea players have. A lot of people in MLS circles were kind of comparing this move to Matt Miazga to Chelsea several years ago, but I think he needs a little bit of development. The one thing that I kind of hang my hat on is he's an absolute sponge and a yes sir, no sir kind of player with the manager. So whatever little tweaks or anything, he's someone who's going to come in, and if Mikel Arteta or one of the other coaches is riding him in training with every single little thing, he's not going to get discouraged by that. He's going to absorb that information and try and mold himself into whatever they're trying to make him be. That's kind of the one thing that I say, that's the one thing that has me thinking he can make it. It's just going to need time.
You have a co-host, do you?
Yes, I do.
Do they get a word in?
He's not joining us at the moment.
Yes, no, what I mean on your show.
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, Mark and I are both very loquacious, so it's usually one of us talking for several minutes and the other one talking for several minutes.
Matt, listen, this is an English football fans podcast. We don't know what loquacious means, mate.
We're very long-winded.
There you go.
Don't worry, I'm Irish. I'm intelligent, so I know what's going on. Dan, being a journalist, you'll understand loquacious. You can have a question off Matt.
I was going to say, Trev, speak for yourself. I know what he's talking about, don't you, Ryan?
Yeah.
Matt, thanks for joining us. The quick question I have, obviously, surrounds Stan Kroenke. He owns both Arsenal and the Colorado Rapids. How much has he influenced this move, do you think? And is it something that we're going to see happen in the future as well, with more players coming over from Colorado to Arsenal?
I don't believe that Stan or his son Josh called in to either club and then talked about that. I do think there's a little bit of a technical interaction. I've spoken a number of times with I guess you would call him the sporting director. He has another long nebulous title that makes sense to Americans that you wouldn't necessarily understand. General manager would be the term that we would use here. Porrick Smith, who's talked about when COVID was going on, pretty much all of the KSC owned properties, including Arsenal, and then as well as the basketball and hockey team here in town, the Colorado Avalanche and Denver Nuggets, kind of got together and shared a lot of information and resources about that. Arsenal was super influential with some of their ideas about Project Restart that certainly helped the Rapids navigate the MLS's back tournament from a COVID protocol standpoint. So maybe somewhere in there, Mikel Arteta was in a meeting or something, and then he and Porrick Smith developed a relationship. I do know, I think it was mentioned right before I got on that Arteta has come over to Colorado. The club obviously recently was in Colorado to play a friendly. It would have been, the guy who's now in Spain who sounds like a vampire. I can't remember the name of the former manager.
Unai Emery.
Unai Emery. Thank you. Okay, won't mention him. Was back in Colorado, so maybe there was a bit of a relationship. But I would say this is more from a technical side that just happened to be convenient by the two teams being owned by KSC rather than something from silent Stan or absent Stan from the above.
One question has come into the chat from the Gooner podcast. Magic Mike said, "Hey Matt, got a question for you. What happened to Cole Bassett? He had a trial at Arsenal and a few other clubs, borderline off the USMNT. Don't know what that is. And now he's off to Feyenoord on an 18-month loan. Do you want to answer that one for us?"
Yeah, sure. So first of all, it's United States Men's National Team, Fergie. That's the acronym that we use there. My understanding, with the opportunities that he's had as Arsenal, and there's been a few other players as well, that's been mostly during the MLS offseason. Obviously, we play usually beginning of March through September, October, and then MLS Cup is usually late November, early December. The Rapids will be starting in Champions League 2 weeks from now, for example. So my understanding, that was more he wanted to get fitness. He wanted to get into a little bit of a different environment, and there were some similarities between his role with the Rapids and what they wanted him to grow at, that he could have used training opportunities elsewhere. And then also you kind of add, he's a young player where normally at his age in his development, there'd be an opportunity for him to go off and play college soccer. And so getting outside of your comfort zone, not living at home with the parents while you're still driving to the stadium 20 minutes or something, was a new environment that he needed, and there was a relationship there. So I think it was more a training opportunity rather than Arsenal looking at investing in him. Bassett did have an opportunity to go to Portugal this past August and turned down that opportunity because it wasn't really the right fit. And Feyenoord came in, offered, a loan option with a loan fee, and then an option to buy that would be, at market value for what Cole Bassett brings. And they kind of sold the club on what it meant financially, and they sold Cole on the project in ways maybe, I don't know that Arsenal were ever in for that player. It would have been more, let's find him, can we loan him out to Millwall once we, pay a meager transfer fee for him? So that's what happened with Cole Bassett. We're excited for him as well, just as we are for Austin.
You see,
one very, very, very brief final question. Go on Saliba, on Trusty. Would he be better than Saliba, who's currently on loan in France?
I've never seen Saliba play, if I'm being honest.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Trev, any final questions?
If Matt could have answered that question, Fergus, I'd have bet my hat, mate. How would Matt know if he's better than Saliba?
It was asked in the chat.
No one sees Saliba play.
It was asked in the chat. No, I just asked the question.
It's an interesting point, interesting thing that Matt spoke about briefly there. Just a last thing is that, as an Arsenal fan, I'd be disappointed if Josh Kroenke didn't phone Arteta and say, look, we've got a player here who might make it in the Premier League. Take him over there for a season. All the money's coming out of the same pot anyway. Have a look at him and let's see if he makes it. I've got no problem at all with our owners doing that. As a matter of fact, I encourage it. Absolutely encourage it.
Mm-hmm. I guess, Fergus, if I were to give a decent comparison, I've had a couple of other Arsenal media members and podcasts pinging me and everything, looking for a decent comparison. And if I were to draw parallels, maybe in terms of potential and the path that he's had, I'd look at Tosin Adarabioyo, who was in the Manchester City system, obviously wasn't getting a lot of playing time. He's now with Fulham, looking to get promoted and everything. I see a lot of similarity to their games, and also kind of similar to Austin needed to step outside his comfort zone of Philadelphia, go to Colorado to get playing time, and maybe in the same way Tosin's ready to challenge with Fulham in the Premier League, maybe Austin Trusty's now ready for a loan move to do a championship side, get a year under his belt, and then really help progress with Arsenal. That would be, if I were to make another comparison, I would say he's right on par with Tosin Adarabioyo, who I'm sure you guys have seen 2 times last year, and hopefully 2 times this year if Fulham keeps playing well. Next year, excuse me.
Very briefly, and think very carefully how you answer this. If you were thinking of your English Premier League side, do you have an English Premier League side, and who do you follow?
I'm actually a Fulham supporter, so yeah, I'm full America on that. So I'd say Austin Trusty's future with the men's national team is certainly much better than where Tim Ream's at. Again, maybe that's where take what I said with a grain of salt, because it's 2 players who I obviously watch twice on every single Saturday, but that'd be a good comparison for me.
Ferg, he's a Fulham fan. Okay, Matt, nice talking to you. See ya.
Matt, thanks very much for joining. Tell people how they can get in touch with you if they're interested in more in the Colorado Rapids and stuff like that, how they get in touch and can follow you.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm on Twitter at LWOS Matt Pollard. You can find my writing at lastwordonsports.com. And then obviously for the podcast, it's Holding the High Line, which on all socials is at Rapids 96 podcast, 96, because the club was founded in 1996. My co-host and I will be recording tonight after the United States men's national team game. And we'll be talking a lot of things about Austin Trusty. And my co-host Mark is actually an Arsenal fan. So maybe then I will forward my question about the lone center back to see whether or not Mark thinks that Austin Trusty is better than him.
Well, get Mark to just start following the show, and maybe he can come on and have a word in. So that'd be quite good. Matt, thank you very, very much. We got a couple of other people waiting in the background to come through.
Cheers, Matt.
We're going to do.
Cheers,
Thanks
mates.
very much. Cheers. Thank you. Bye. So next up, we have got from Canada, I believe, Stan the Man. Stan, we were introduced virtually a few days ago on Danny's Bergkamp Wonderland.
That's
We
right.
were doing his marathon transfer window day, and you gave it a score then. How's your score changed?
Well, we was using a different score then. We were using from a minus, was it -10 to +10?
Yeah,
but
we're a little bit more sensible on this one.
Yes,
so
it's a little bit more easy here. I'm going to go with a 5 because I think that we managed to accomplish 50% of what we needed to do. There was a pile of deadwood that's been piling up in the corner now for a long time, and we managed to get that out into the back and throw it all onto the skip. So I'm pretty pleased about that side of it. But for me, when I look at this transfer window, I still feel the same as I did when it shut, and I'm left with a feeling of anxiety. I'm not angry or anything like that. I'm not throwing my toys out the pram. I just feel a little bit anxious, and the reason that I feel anxious is I think that it's imperative for Arsenal to get into Europe in some shape or form this season. I think that we may struggle to get to the big boys table at the Champions League, but the minimum requirement for me, we have to finish 6th. That has to be the minimum requirement to get at least into the Europa League. And the reason that I think it's so imperative, we've been out for so long now. And I was on a podcast about 6 months ago, and they were talking about how we were going to get this player and how we're talking to that player. And I was trying to raise the question that I was feeling that our star had faded. Well, 6 months on from that conversation, I think our star has faded even more. So what worries me is that if we don't get back into Europe and we get into next summer's transfer window, where we probably would have money as well, it sounds like the owners are giving money when needed. Who are we going to be able to entice? Because a modern footballer these days, you don't really see a modern footballer saying, well, yeah, I know that you're not in Europe, but I'm going to come there and I'm going to be the hero and I'm going to fire you back into the Champions League. They never say that. It's usually the other way around. Well, if you're not in the Champions League or Europe, then maybe I don't want to come there. So I'm worried about the further recruitments that we're going to get the job done to get to where we want to be. If we can only attract mediocre players, then I'm worried that we're going to get trapped in this hamster wheel of not quite being able to get back into Europe, even though we have the money, but we can't get the right players.
Yeah, Stan, I'll take over because Fergus does this, mate. He disappears now and again. He goes to put 10 pence in the electricity meter and then he pops back again. But it's really interesting what you say, mate. There's 2 points you raised there. I want to go back to you saying we need to get 6th, and that's always been my view this season. I think that us finishing 6th would show an improvement on the previous couple of seasons. That's my view. We'd be back in Europe where we haven't been for a couple of seasons. We'd have finished higher in the league than we have for a couple of seasons. So 6 would satisfy me. It wouldn't satisfy a lot of Arsenal fans, but it certainly satisfy me. What's your thoughts on that, Stan?
I agree exactly the same with what you're saying there, Hilsey. For me, we were going into this season, and I think even for Mikel Arteta's job security, I think the minimum requirement, I said at the beginning of the season, it has to be Europa League. That's the minimum. Okay, we're not going to get any cups. Fine. We have to get into the Europa League. We've been out of Europe for far too long for a club of our stature and where we want to be. And, as I just mentioned a moment ago, who are we going to entice if we're not at the big boys table to get into Europe? It worries me, Hilsey. So I agree with exactly what you're saying there. 6 is the minimum requirement.
And
Dan, you've
if
got any
you were
questions for Stan?
Yeah.
Sorry, Fergus, let's see your back, mate.
Yeah, sorry, it's all right.
No, I was just going to agree on the point that I do think 6th it should be the aim. I think we've needed the past 2 seasons to have that reality check and to understand that we're not the team we used to be. We're not going to challenge for league titles, and we're now not guaranteed a top 4 place. And I think there is now that understanding that this is a rebuilding process. And I think we've seen that this month with the shipping off of the deadwood players, essentially. So, yeah, I think, as you say, 6th should be the aim. And I feel like we're getting there slowly but steadily.
Can I also say a lot of people you know, when I speak to a lot of people about Arsenal in the various podcasts that I'm on, there's a big feeling that we've got a very good first 11, but we're a little bit short. We're a little bit short after that. I have to disagree with them. I think that we've got a very good first starting 9. I think there were 2 places in the squad where we were incredibly weak and could upgrade. So I know some people are saying that they don't feel that we are short. I feel that we were short going into the window because we only had a very good first 9, and we haven't really done anything to improve upon the first 9 to get to a first 11. And yes, I know that we only have 17 games, and that first 9 can maybe play most of those games, but I fear as well that we don't have a lot of variety on the bench if we do need to change things around because the way of an opponent may be coming at us. And I think that a lot of our opponents are going to sort of like know exactly what it is that we're going to be about because they know who we're going to be playing every game. There's no variety on the bench. I think Mikel is a little bit cautious to use too many of the Hale End Academy boys. So I also worry that we may be a little bit too predictable at times.
See, sorry, Ferg, I'm going to come in once more, mate, then I'll let you take back over because I'm liking having Stan on because I agree with Stan all the time and this is nice. You see, I honestly think that I think that Arteta thinks the same as you. We only speculate, Stan. I say it every podcast. We don't know. But I think that Arteta probably thinks the same as the like of you and me, mate. He's got a great starting 9 and he needs 2, maybe 3 more players to make it a great starting 11. And I honestly think that they've probably gone out to buy those 2 players in this window and they've not been able to get them. And this is where your point's correct, mate. The longer you spend out of European football, the harder it is to entice the big players to join your football club. A prime example of that is Liverpool. They fell from grace and it took them years and years and years and years before they could attract the kind of player that was going to get them back to the top where they are now, you know. So we have got to stop the fall. The only way I differ to you, mate, is I think probably Arteta's on edge. You have got to try and buy these 2 players. Couldn't get what they wanted, so they've said, right, we're not taking any then, you know.
I'd agree with that as well. And I'm glad that they did that. I'm glad that they didn't go out and buy a Band-Aid, you know, just to put over the small cut. And in a year's time, when we don't want that person, we can't move them on because they've got a high salary. We're supposed to be lowering the deadwood pile, not adding to it. So, I mean, you know, we hear that the board intervened and vetoed the Arthur deal. I mean, I don't know who was in charge of that deal, whether it's Mikel or Edu, but they were saved from themselves, from the board, because that was such a one-loaded way in that deal. 18 months on loan with an obligation to buy. What happens after like 3 to 6 months? And you sort of like, you look at this player and you think, he's not what I want. You're saddled. So whoever made that decision and vetoed that deal, thank you very much, because you saved Edu and Mikel from themselves there.
Stan, what's your view on this when you see this team photo that pops up here? This is the Emery side. And you talk about it being brutal. That is one hell of a brutal cull. We got 7 players left, and that's El Neni, squad player, Xhaka, Marmite, Leno, squad player, Holding, squad player. Who we got at the back? We got Lacazette. We got Smith Rowe, and is that Saka as well, or who's that?
No, it's
Eddie Nketiah, sorry. Yeah. So off that squad, 7 players. What's your thoughts on that then, Stan?
I'll tell you what my thoughts are, and it's something that I've been saying probably right near the beginning when Mikel Arteta was appointed, and certainly halfway through his tenure so far. And as I believe that the rebuild will never ever begin to start in earnest until every single player at the club that was at the club under Arsene Wenger is no longer there. And I say that because since Arsene Wenger has left, we have had new managers. We've had Emery. We had an interim manager there with Freddie. Now we've got Mikel. We've changed around what's happening at the board. We brought in people like Dick Garlick. The only one constant at the club are players that were there under Arsene Wenger. So for me, I'm glad to see that we are making that shift because, as I said there, I don't believe that the rebuild will start in earnest until all of those players under Arsene Wenger are no longer with Arsenal.
Dan, any questions?
No, just another point. I think we're talking about, you know, the amount of players from that Emirates team that are no longer here. I was at Arteta's first press conference when he was appointed way back, 2 years ago, and he spoke quite, at length about wanting to be ruthless with players. And I think we've seen that, with Ozil, for example, Guendouzi, Aubameyang more recently. And I think that's exactly what we need. We don't need to be burdened with these players who don't want to be here, who aren't going to behave in the correct way, who are not going to give their all. You look at people like Ramsdale, Ben White. You can tell they've come here and they want to be here and they want to do well. And that's exactly the kind of player we need. So I, for one, am delighted that most of those players are gone, and even more will be going soon, hopefully.
Well, for some Arsenal fans, I don't really know what they want. Under Arsene Wenger, they say that he walked around with a feather duster. Under Mikel Arteta, they say that he walks around with a rod of iron. You can't have it both ways. You either want the club to have structure and discipline, or you want it nice and relaxed, and you want the lunatics to run the asylum, essentially.
I think with Arteta as well, I'm confident that he is going to make the decisions that are best for the club. He was here as a player. He was captain. He won trophies with the club. He understands what it means to play for the Arsenal and now to manage the Arsenal. And I think he is going to make decisions that are correct. And we've seen that, obviously, with Aubameyang most recently. A lot of people have disagreed with what he's done, but I think it was exactly the right thing to do. If you aren't going to lead by example as a captain, if you aren't going to turn up on time, if you're going to be ill-disciplined, then, you don't need to be here. We don't want you here.
Yeah. The old phrase is play for the name on the front of the shirt and you'll remember the name on the back. Stan, let everybody know how they can find you. Thank you for joining. I hope you've enjoyed it as brief. I know it was only a 5-10 minute sort of cameo. If you like it, we can organise getting you on for a longer period of time, because I think you and Trev have got very similar thoughts.
Well, it's good to finally meet. I mean, I'm sure that you and I have met once before, Fergus, maybe about 2 or 3 years ago when I was still living
I was
in
probably
Amsterdam.
drunk.
Stan, you'd remember, trust me, mate. You'd remember, Stan, if you'd met him.
I'm on the alcohol free tonight.
I have been watching the shows. I've seen Hillsy before, and as I mentioned to you when I was on with Danny, I caught you one night just as I was going to bed, and it's just because of the times here, and you were doing one of your history shows, and you asked me a question the other day, and you kind of caught me off guard, and you said to me what was one of the most interesting points that I heard on one of your history shows. And the one that really does jump to mind when I gave it some thought after coming off the show was that Arsenal started off as a cricket club. I heard on one of your shows, right? And that was something that I had no idea about. And I'll say it again in case we've got any of the younger viewers that are listening. If you do want to find out a little bit about Arsenal's heritage, I mean, I'm 53 and I've been supporting Arsenal since, the end of the 70s. Watch the show, the history show on this channel that they do, because you do find out a lot of things that I had never even heard of. So if you do want to find out some history, tune in. Great to meet you guys. Sorry, Hillsy.
No, I was just letting Fergus know that I was going to come back with thanks for that, Stan. You have no idea how much I enjoyed doing that along with Fergus. But you're right, mate. To confirm that point, I have to be careful, because if Andy and Mark see this, the other two that do the history show, and I'm wrong, as Fergus well knows, they will chew our heads off. But the Arsenal Football Club was formed out of there was a cricket club at Dial Square, I believe, or down that way somewhere, and they wanted something to do in the winter. So at one of the AGMs, they decided to form a football club, and that was the beginning of the Arsenal, mate. You're exactly right, Stan. It's been a pleasure, this chat, mate. I'll just chat with you longer another time. Sorry, Ferg, I've butted in again, mate.
Yeah,
no, it's fine. Give me some time.
I know you got some guests there waiting. Good to talk to you all. Would love to come back. If you want to find me, I'm at here on Twitter. That's my handle. And on Thursdays, every Thursday, I'm on at the Arsenal Fan Circle. And there's a few other podcasts. I'm basically one of those guys that I just like to whore myself out to Arsenal podcasts. Anyone that will have me.
We know those sorts.
And chat Arsenal. So anyway, have a good rest of your week, lads. Nice to talk to you.
Cheers, Dan.
Thanks a lot. Stan. Cheers. Done. If anybody hasn't seen the Arsenal History podcast, there's a link in the chat. I don't know if we'd be able to lift it out of there, but click on the link, and there's 8 shows, but there's 7 shows that are there was one like roundup which we done first, and then we realized it was so enjoyable that we broke it down into sections. So you got 1886 to 1913 when we moved to Highbury, so it was the Woolwich and Plumstead years. Then we go into Highbury, then we do the war, then we do the Barron spell between after the war to the 50s. And each one I'm thinking, I said to Trev beforehand, like, oh, this is going to be hard work. This is going to be hard work. And every one of them were totally enjoyable. We have another guest, the choir master of the clock end. It is Ben Bennett. Ben, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
Hey up, Ben. All
right,
right,
boys. How are you? All right. Yeah.
I'm all right,
Yeah,
Ben.
really good, mate. Really good.
Yeah,
So
good stuff.
Ben
Good
just
stuff.
clicked on this link. He went on to gunsandribbons.com and joined the show. We have got a couple of others in the green room waiting to come on. So there is space for probably one or two more if you do want to join the show. It's 10 or 15 minutes. That's what it is. Ben, rate the window. What do you think of the window?
6.
Okay. That's a bit. That's
between,
a bit better.
I was going to say between a 6. I was going to say
fives.
between a 6 and a 7. I was going to be kind. I was going between a 6 and a 7. I couldn't decide. So yeah.
And why have you gone between a 6 and a 7? What makes you drop your score to a 6 or raise your score from everybody else? The other two that have given 5s.
I just think getting rid of Aubameyang has put the score up a little bit more. I think that's a huge thing a huge statement. We've once again, as Dan said earlier on about Arteta's ruthlessness, and he's backed up in that very first interview he done. And he like I said, he done it with Guendouzi, he done it with Ozil, and he's done it with Aubameyang now. I think no player is bigger than the club, and that's always been a true saying about that. And I think, like everyone else has said, at the end of the day, what we've got rid of, what's gone out, is not going to be a key part for us for the rest of the season anyway. So what's the point of them hanging about? Of course, we'd have liked a couple of players come in, but would you have kept any of the key 6? I was a little bit surprised about Chambers. I thought, but I think my decision was made up at the Burnley game, and I thought he probably should have started right back and Ben White in the centre half. But he didn't even play a part, did he? So I thought that the decision must have been made then. Otherwise, I'm not really too surprised. Yeah, just go with what we got now. We was hoping for a couple of players, but I don't agree in panic buys, especially at this stage. I said I don't want to be in the summer thinking these panic buys are not going to be able to do it. We're going to pay their wages, and what's the point when we can put this money towards better attribute players that are going to strengthen the side, and the summer's going to be massive.
Fergus, can I just jump in quickly? Sorry,
I was going to ask you to actually.
Yeah, just on the Callum Chambers thing, I think Ben and somebody else mentioned they were a bit surprised he was one of the ones who went. From my understanding, that is because he had, I think it was 6 months left to run on his deal, and he wasn't going to sign a new one. So it was sell him now and get a little bit of a fee, which I believe was in the region of £2 to £3 million. So it's recouping some money that we wouldn't have got in the summer, basically. So I think that was the logic behind moving Chambers on.
I think that's what we paid about 2 million for him as well, because we paid a lot.
We paid a lot more. We paid about 16 million. It was a lot more than 2.
Yeah,
was it 16 for him and 2 for Holding, or the other way around?
Yeah,
it
was 2 for Holding and 16 for Chambers. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why we kept Holding, I suppose. Ben, I suppose a final question for you on that. What's your thoughts about not getting a striker?
I don't believe that we didn't try and get someone, but I believe that with this guy from Fiorentina, he clearly didn't want to come and play for us. So to me, any player that doesn't want to come and play for us, we shouldn't be wasting any time. They say we wasted. This is all media thinking behind. We wasted time on trying to get him. I don't know. Nobody knows if he actually. He obviously had an interest in the player, but when they turn around and they would rather go somewhere else, then you don't waste any more time. But the striker business is obviously probably our priority going into the summer, and it was really priority in January. But if there's no one else out there, don't go rush into it, and go and spend the money in the summer. But I also think. no one was too sure about what was going on with Aubameyang. That turned out to be 15 minutes before the deadline shut. So I also believed that we wasn't going to bring in another striker all the time that Aubameyang was still at the club. So when you got that sort of wages floating about, they're not going to go and spend 60, 70 million on a striker when you're paying someone 350k a week floating about the club for nothing. So
I don't think
that's a big thing now.
Somehow I don't think it was 15 minutes. I think the club knew and wanted to move him on. He done an other wingy by going out to Barcelona as well.
Son, it's a good point, that Ben makes there, mate. It's a good point in that definitely we don't know the timings, Ferg, and you're exactly right, mate. We don't know the timings with Aubameyang's move away from that. But imagine there's no way the club would have wanted to go out and buy a striker for 60 or 70 million and put
be
him
stuck with him as well,
and then get stuck with Alba as well. They wouldn't have wanted that in the slightest. But to sum it up, mate, Ferg, look, flip the coin over and look at it from the other side, right? We've bought no one that we're going to have to battle and get rid of in a year or two's time for nothing. We've bought no other Premier League rejects, right? We've got no one's cast off because, we've bought in players from Man United, from Chelsea in the past, and none of them have ever been quite top-notch with us. And do you know why they've never been quite top-notch? Because Man United and Chelsea, if they were that top-notch, they wouldn't sell them to us. They wouldn't sell them to us if they were still of a standard to win leagues, So, if you look at it from the other side, then for me, not buying someone, looking at it that way, is a positive. Is a positive, a massive positive.
If I was to put my tuppence in on that, just to close on this one for a minute, I agree wholeheartedly, except that the fact that Lacazette and Eddie couldn't score in a brothel at the minute. They've scored two goals in the league between them. 3 goals in all competitions. So I would have liked somebody who could put it in the onion bag, and I can't see it. I'd like maybe to look at bringing in some of the kids that we talked about in some of the not the main games, but every game is going to be a main game, I suppose, to a certain degree. But also I'd like to possibly explore going 2 up top with Martinelli and maybe Pepe. I'm not a great fan of Pepe, as you know, but he's got to be played right now because he's got to be given the opportunity. If he's not given the opportunity now, you might as well just give him away in the summer for nothing. Ben, thank you very much for joining you.
That's all right.
Go on.
Yeah,
go on.
That's all right. I was going to say it's a very good chance. I think we might see Martinelli up top on his own. Now, there's no reason why not.
I don't think he's ideal on his own because he drifts too much. I think he'd be up top on his own as a pairing would be very good.
But I think he'll actually play Smith Rowe, Odegaard as well. Won't be far behind him.
Okay.
So yeah, okay. The options are there, aren't they? The options are there, but we badly need goals. They've got to turn a corner somewhere.
I'm holding these up. The Gooner Fanzine. Yeah. Clearly, Dan writes for the Gooner Fanzine. But shall we sing a song for you? You got loads in here, Ben. So...
I told you they were basic. they were basic in the issue. This one, you'll manage 3 of those out of the 4.
I think I will. Benny,
easily.
I got that one.
Easily. I done it just for you.
Thank you. Ben, thank you very much for joining us.
Fergus?
Shall we sing a song for Ferg?
No, you're all right. No.
Ben, let everyone know where they can find you. Obviously, they can get you in the Gooner Fanzine. Where else can they find you? With Ashburton Army in the Clock End?
Nah. Yeah, just at Clock End Ben 30. Really, no, that's it's not Gooner Ben 30. It's at Clock End Ben 30. So on Twitter. Yeah. So I look forward to seeing you next Thursday. Hopefully.
See you in Wolves, Ben. See you in Wolverhampton.
See you in Wolves, boys. Yeah, up the Arsenal.
It's my birthday this Friday, so that's my birthday celebration. So yes, staying over. It won't be alcohol-free San Miguel that night. I'll tell you that.
No, definitely not. Definitely not.
Definitely not. Ben, thanks very much. Cheers. Thank you.
Cheers, boys.
Cheers. Bye.
Yeah, mate.
Right, guys, this has gone really well. Actually, I've really enjoyed it. It's been good fun. We have got another guest. We have room probably for one more if anybody else wants to join in. Just to let you know, if you want to join us, it's down the bottom there. But in big, gonsandyellowribbons.com, join the show. Who we have got coming up next is Albert J. TV. Albert, how are you, Albert?
Yes, lads, what's happening?
He's a
good.
superstar. That is coming from afar, reaching to the. Hello, how are you, mate? All right.
Good. It's been a while since I've seen you guys. I missed you, man.
It's been
I
a
know,
long
of course. It's the place to be, is Guns and Yellow Ribbons, especially on a Wednesday night.
Of course,
you know where to
course.
go. Right. I've got a couple of questions for you, and then
Go
the
on,
guys can have a couple of questions. The first question I've asked everyone is rate the window.
Good. I see some people giving it very generous scores.
Okay.
Yes, I did. But no, me personally, I'm very underwhelmed. It's hard to rate a window like that for me, but I gave it a 0. I think I gave it.
Oh,
here we go. Here we go.
Right. That's fine. Everyone is entitled to an opinion. They're a little bit like what we've all got, an opinion. Yeah. So, why do you give it a 0?
Don't get me wrong. Like, I take into account saving Uber's wages and players gone out and dead wood and strategy this, strategy that. But we was in a position, coming into a good position in terms of having a decent run of games, and trying to cement a top 4 finish. And for me, that's gone up in smoke a little bit. People talk about there's still games to play for in terms of what we've got this season. But if you look at some of our fixtures, we're playing a lot of the teams in and around us. And one thing, for me, 2 things you want to see during a transfer window. And by the way, Fergus, I was never that confident that Arsenal would kind of necessarily get what needs to get done in January anyway. We just notoriously, it's been a bit of a letdown anyway. But it's a difficult window, but it's not an impossible window. And for me, two things that need to kind of happen. One, it's you bring players in to give the current playing squad most definitely a bit of a lift. And 2 as well, to give the fans a bit of a lift as well, just to get our sink our teeth in, to try and get our teeth into it and be buoyed by some fresh blood to help the depleted and not so strong squad. But that didn't happen, and subsequently that's why I've given the window the rating that I've given it.
If you look at our you talk about we're going to have to play our rivals around us. Our rivals around us for 4th place are Man United, West Ham, Spurs. Man United done nothing in the window. West Ham done nothing in the window. They toyed with a 50 million bid for a player who was never going to be sold. They were linked with another 60 million player in Calvert-Lewin that was Everton are never going to sell when they're in a relegation fight. And Spurs signed 2 players, one of which was a striker that played 6 games for Juventus and was clearly surplus to the requirements. And the other one, I don't watch Italian football. He may be a superstar, but
very good player.
Okay, so that's why I caveated it with that at the beginning. Have they really strengthened us? Like James has put in the chat as well. Wolves, don't rule out Wolves. They're, we've got 2 games against them coming up. That aside, I don't think many people, bar Newcastle, nobody done shed loads of business in this window. And I think what we've done is we've type of got our house in order. But how big is this summer's window for us if we're looking that far ahead?
I've heard the summer window, how big is it for Arsenal, for about the last 10 plus years. I've heard that every season. There's no reason for me to be any confident going into the summer. I know you talk about Manchester United, but at least with them, it's not obviously ideally they want to play better as a team and a more cohesive unit, but they've got match winners in their side all over the gaff. Tottenham, you can talk about it as much as you want and ridicule them, but I don't know too much about whatever his name is, I can't remember now, but Bentancur, Yeah, Bentancur is a very, very good signing. Yes, it hasn't worked out for him, Juventus, but Fergus, what certain teams have done is you give yourself a chance. Newcastle may still go down, but their fans have got something to get their teeth into. They've given themselves a chance. The likes of, for example, Brighton and Burnley. Gone.
Newcastle aren't in the running for top 4 or top 6.
No, that's not the point I'm making. No,
Okay.
that's not the point I'm making, because irrespective of whatever your credentials are in the league, whether that's solidifying from a place of strength in terms of Liverpool getting Diaz, Man City getting Alvarez, or Brighton probably looking to solidify a top 10, or Burnley or Newcastle looking to stay in the league, you have to address certain areas. And Arsenal have failed to do that. And that's my problem. You can talk about Newcastle struggling for relegation or Burnley, but they've addressed the areas they need, and they've addressed the area where we haven't, and that's a striker situation.
I can't disagree with what you said there. Go on, Trevor. Were you going to say something?
No, you see, Albert's right. This is why we have these podcasts, and this is when conversations like this take place. It's the nice side of social media, because I don't necessarily agree with everything that Albert says, but by God, he's got some valid points there, some real valid points in that. I mean, I think that Arsenal did probably try and go out and buy a player, but they wouldn't buy what we did, players that weren't of a certain standard. And it just got me thinking then, when Fergus, you and Albert were talking about the players that Newcastle's bought, of all them players that Newcastle's bought, would any of them have come in and improved our current side, our current first team? I've not even looked at who Newcastle's bought, so I'm asking a question genuinely for an answer.
I don't think they bought a striker. They bought Dunn as a
defensive. They bought Chris Woods, and they tried to get
Chris
another
Wood.
striker in. Yeah, but
you're all right.
Chris Wood. Yeah.
So Newcastle have got to buy the standard of player that's going to remove them from the relegation positions in the table. We already have that standard of player. We're looking for a standard of player that's going to get us into Europe. I differ slightly once again in that I think that top 6 will do for me. I'd see that as progression. I can fully understand Arsenal fans wanting to see us back in the Champions League, because that's where we all want to be, and that's understandable. But you've got to remember, I think, that Newcastle, and it'd be interesting to get Dan's view and Albert's view, Newcastle are buying players to get them of a standard that gets them out of a relegation zone. Arsenal already have those players. We already have that. We want players that are going to get us into the Champions League.
Sorry, Trev. I just had a message pop up from Joe Tester. She says on my Facebook, she came along and said, I'm not liking this, Fergus. I can't bloody comment on the YouTube link, because they said I planned it all. Bath, face mask, the whole thing. Clicked on the link, and she clicked on the wrong link. She clicked on the link that lets you join the show. So she nearly ended up joining the show sitting in the bath. Sorry, Joanne, if you are listening. Yeah, you can comment if you go onto the YouTube link. It's quite easily done, but we're trying to keep it on one platform so everyone can talk together. Sorry, Dan, did you have any questions for Albert?
Not so much questions. I just wanted to kind of add a further point to what Albert said. Albert, you said about making signings to lift fans, and I understand that. I get what you're saying. I think,
not necessarily that, because I saw someone drop in the comments, and look, we're not, but the club's not going to buy players and lift the fans. I'm talking in the sense that as a fan of the club or whatever club you support. I mean, for example, Dan, like I was seeing when Ramsey went to Rangers, I saw how excited the fans were. That's what I mean. I'm not talking about the club buying players to please us. That's never going to happen.
Yeah. Well, what I think the problem we have is that in January, it's not a window where you can go and get the players you want. It's you get what's available. And I think that's why they went for Vlahovic, for example, because he was somebody who was available. He's on a long list of strikers that Arsenal were interested in. There was obviously a lot of talk about Alexander Isak, Dominic Calvert-Lewin, Jonathan David. Those three, Isak with his release clause, probably available. I think £75 million for a striker who scored 4 goals all season doesn't represent good value for money. I think somebody like Calvert-Lewin and David would work perfectly in Arsenal's system and would bring the goals that we need, but they weren't available in January. So I'd much rather the club keep that money for the summer. We're in a good position now. I understand that fans are frustrated that we've not brought somebody in to improve, but it's January. There's very little chance you are going to sign somebody who will improve the team. You look at Denis Suarez, a few years ago when he came in January and he played, 60-odd minutes? Those are the kind of signings you end up making. It's just not worth the money. So I think, waiting until the summer is the correct thing to do.
Dan.
Sorry, Fergus, go on.
I would say equally, Dan, you can sign somebody on loan from Real Madrid in Odegaard, who we've now signed for half the money on a full-time contract, and he is improving and growing in confidence.
Yeah, but how often, think about the January signings we've made in the past, Fergus. How often has that happened? You look at players who've had Suarez.
It's normally with broken back players.
Players like Suarez, Kallstrom. It's just, they're players who aren't going to improve a team that are trying to challenge for Europe. They're not the kind of players we need. So I'd much rather take the money we've got now and invest it in the summer. I think it's a much more worthwhile thing to do.
Albert, with 17 games left, is this squad good enough to get where in the league for you?
I was asked at the start of the season where Arsenal would finish, and I said if what I saw to the back end of last season, and actually probably it's a good question you asked me now when I'm looking at what I've seen this season. I think we'd be lucky to get top 8, mate. And that's strange to say that. Yeah, because but it's the thing is, don't get me wrong, the chance is there to get top 4, but I don't think the squad's good enough. And I said that if they don't address the attacking side of the team, they're not going to get it. And they won't.
Would you consider bringing in Super Jack Wilshere on a pay-as-you-play? Would that help get the squad over that line?
I personally wouldn't do that. I get the nostalgia behind it and the sentiment behind it, but I think we need to leave sentiment to one side for quite a few times, to be honest, with Arsenal players. So no, I wouldn't be on board for that.
There's no place for sentiment in football. No, absolutely not. Yeah. Well, if he wasn't cut out for the standard of West Ham or Bournemouth in the Championship,
then why is he going to come and help us?
Why is he going to be up to the standard we need?
Yeah, good point.
He was great back in the day, but I think his time's been and gone, unfortunately.
Time's moved on, man. Moved on, Arsenal fans. There you go.
So expand on that ever so slightly. Do you think it's a good influence to have around the training ground, Dan?
Yeah, I think he's a brilliant influence to have around the training ground, but I don't think he'd be up to the standard on the pitch. I think he's someone who has come through the club and he understands what it means to play for Arsenal, and he's got that experience and that wisdom to impart on the younger players. I think especially people like Smith Rowe, Saka, and then further down Charlie Patino. I think there's a lot of similarities between the two of them. So I think he's a really good influence to have around. And he did an interview, I think it was yesterday, where he's talking about the influence that he's able to have on these younger players and how he's improved as a coach as well. So maybe there is a future for him at the club, but I don't think it's on the playing staff, unfortunately.
Trevor, questions?
Well, I think the boys are dead right about Jack Wilshere. I think the world of Jack Wilshere is Arsenal through and through, but he shouldn't play for Arsenal again. It'd be only sentiment that got him in the side. But Albert made a really interesting point, about buying players to increase the volume from the fans and excite the fans. And you don't do that. You don't do that intentionally. But I honestly think that this season, the reason we've seen better atmospheres at the Emirates is because of the type of player we've got. It's crystal clear to the fans. It's crystal clear to the fans that we've got players in our side that want to play for our football club. We've mentioned them earlier: Ramsdale, White, Tierney, even Lacazette pumps the fans up. And when the fans see players putting in that amount of effort on the field, they're going to reciprocate from the stands. It's going to happen. And that is why you've seen such an increased atmosphere at the Emirates this season, because these players apparently appear and look like they're really trying to play for the Arsenal. So, Albert, you're right, mate, in what you say. It's a two-way thing, fans and players playing well.
Sure. Albert, so a final question. So if you look at Arsenal's window, you give it a 0. And then it seems that, and not necessarily I'm not putting words in your mouth, but a lot of the fan base blame Mikel Arteta for the so-called poor window in certain people's views. Woodward or Levy, would they not be the people who get blamed if Spurs or Man United or, Klopp won't get blamed, Conte won't get blamed if they have poor signings, will they? So why is Arteta coming into such heat?
Oh, there's a fair few on Edu's case. Don't worry about that. But no, I know what you mean.
Yeah, I'm there.
Because you know what it is. I've said this on your channel before. Where people have made up their mind about Mikel Arteta, probably the last 12 months, irrespective of whatever Arsenal do in terms of form on the pitch, they don't want him here. So that's where a lot of that comes from. He's going to bear the brunt of it. It's like, even I get Arsenal fans being disappointed with the transfer window. I wasn't happy with the transfer window, and the two American boys we signed, Trusty and Matt Turner, it's not their fault. They got a dream to play for Arsenal, but Arsenal fans are sort of taking out their frustration on them. But Arteta you can blame in terms of, or you can look at in terms of, what was the situation as to why we let Maitland-Niles go when he did, knowing the shortage in terms we had in midfield, to me was crazy. And I'm not a fan of Maitland-Niles, by the way, but for me, from a logical sense of point of view, you have to look at Mikel Arteta for that. But yeah, Fergus,
why? Because what should Mikel have jumped up and down and go? He can go, but go at the end of January. Is that what you're saying?
Now, what I heard is a lot of people saying that at least if you're gonna keep it, if you can try and keep him for a bit longer, because like I said, that game against Nottingham Forest, I mean, I felt sorry for Patino, to be honest with you, because you can look at a game like that, and Maitland-Niles would have been ideal for that, whether that, in the covering in the midfield area, because we had a shortage of players, and we knew that's the problem I think you've got, Fergus, is that we knew what was happening this season in terms of the AFCON tournament going to be happening around the time it was, and Arsenal being in the position that it was. And what as well, the thing is, with the last couple of seasons and the COVID and the players having to miss games because of that, it's a very different season, and Arsenal have a thin squad as it is. As people rightly say, we are a couple of injuries or COVID cases away from being really in the mire. And that I think was a lot of the problem with some probably Arsenal fans' views in terms of the window. I'll be honest, like I said, Fergus, I think whether you're an Arsenal fan, I said this so many times in the last couple of days, whether you was extremely overly positive, just for the sake of being positive, or ridiculously negative, I was surprised they didn't bring anybody in. And that's no disrespect to two American guys that have come in. I was generally shocked. And I think even the most sort of intelligent people, broadcasters and journalists who were Arsenal fans, were like, you know what, about 72 hours out, I don't think anything's going to happen, For when they resigned themselves to it, they're like, I'm thinking, wow, I think we're not going to get anyone in. And it was confirmed.
I agree, because I said earlier I just wanted somebody who could score goals, and I thought that was the area we needed to address first and foremost. And my mind was made up after the Burnley game when I saw Lacazette working really, really, really hard, but he just hasn't got the legs to get from so deep in the midfield. Dan, look at the comment below from James Power. If success and winning are the manager to take all the plaudits, should it also be vice versa?
I think a manager plays a big part in a team's success, but there's a lot more to it. There's the people behind the scenes. I think Edu is key, and if there is to be a test, he will be key to that in terms of bringing in the right players. I think the players themselves as well, having a spirit and a togetherness and being a unit rather than a team of individuals is important. So I don't think it all falls on the manager. And I agree with Albert. I think he said at the start about, there are people out there who want to give Arteta grief regardless because they just don't want him to be there. I get that. I get that, a lot on Twitter. You read the comments and it's just people who don't want him there, and it doesn't matter how well he's going to do. But he came in and won the FA Cup within 6 months. I think that that shows that there is something there, and that we are slowly building something. I think we've seen an improvement from this season on last season, and I think we are slowly getting there.
Trevor, final comments before we close?
Well, do you know what, Albert's? It's been nice having these guests on tonight, because we've had so many different views and so many different opinions, and every one of our guests has got my mind going off on a different tangent, thinking about the transfer window.
I'll be getting the text at midnight going, Albert was right on this. Albert was right. Gans.
Do you know what? Once again, I'm not necessarily agreeing with everybody, but ideally, this transfer window, we'd got rid of everybody that we did, and we'd have bought 2 players in, and we'd have bought in a striker and a midfield player for me, and I'd have been very comfortable with that. And it's a way of showing the improvement we've got and how close we are. Right? I was watching Harry Symeou, great lad Harry Symeou, sits very near me in Block 7 in the Emirates, and I often have a big chat with Harry at the games. And he was on the BBC earlier, and he was talking about our great club, and he pointed out a key point they made. It was a point that we made on here a few weeks ago, actually. I'm not saying that Harry nicked it, but we made the point in that the improvements have come this year. In a winning team, right, a top team needs a top goal scorer banging in 20, 25, 30 goals a season. Then you need 2 or 3 players around them chipping in, right? We've had none of that last few years. We've struggled. Our youngsters have developed into the 2 or 3 that chip in. You've got Saka will score you a few. You've got Smith Rowe is the top goal scorer for us this season. You've got Martinelli, who's finally broken through this season and showing that he's gonna score us some goals. So looking at that, when I look at that, I think to myself, looking at it from that perspective, we're 1 player short. We're a striker. We're a 20, 25 goal a season striker short of being a really, really good side. I'd like to see a midfielder as well, but I do think we're really close. And as much as I'm desperate to see us bring in somebody, Albert, you're right, mate. We desperately needed to bring in a striker and another player in this window. And I was gutted when we didn't. But I was also pleased that we didn't bring in, I'm going to name a few names. I was pleased that we didn't bring in a Welbeck or a Willian, or someone that's not going to lift to do what we need to do. So Albert, you're right. We needed to bring players in, and I agree with you. But I'm also thinking we didn't bring in people that are not worth bringing in. So make your own mind up, really, everybody out there, isn't it? It's 6 of one and a half dozen the other.
Albert, tell people where they can find you. You have your own channel, and you do some other stuff for some other channels as well.
I do. I'm here, there, and everywhere, Fergus, mate. Flipping hell. No, pleasure. Thank you for having me on, man. It's good to see you guys again, man. Nice to meet Dan as well. Yeah, people, got my own channel, Albert J TV. Come and subscribe, people. On the road to 1K, as they say. And my Twitter handle is right next to it at AUMO57. So come and check us out, people.
Albert, take care, mate. Lovely seeing you again, mate.
Definitely, man.
Thank you, mate. Cheers, mate. Cheers. See you later. Thanks, mate. Bye.
Top man, Albert. Top man. Man.
One thing I wanted to share before we go is we talked about the History Channel, not the History Channel, the Arsenal History podcast. If you go onto our YouTube channel, you can see on here, if you go to the playlists, this is effectively, you got the history intro, which is just an overall one, which is the second one down. And then you got Plumstead to Highbury, you got the Chapman era, you've got the 35 to 53, which covers the war and some really interesting stuff there about what happened at Highbury during the war. Then we got 53 to 86, which was basically right up until George Graham, then George Graham to 96, and then we had the Wenger era, and then 2018 and beyond. Check it out if you like, people, and let us know what you think. And while you're on there, if you like the channel, click like on the button. We do this as a hobby. We are Arsenal fans just like you, and we're not here for like fame and fortune. We're just here to enjoy following and supporting our great club. Dan, Any final thoughts?
Just been a pleasure to be here, boys. I've really enjoyed it. It's been nice to, as Trev said, get a lot of different views and opinions on the Arsenal. I think it's transfer window is obviously a time where there are a lot of different opinions thrown around, but I think we've all spoken and heard a lot of sense tonight.
And tell people about this.
Even Ferg.
Well, I'd say all of us, yeah, maybe not. But yeah. Gooner Fanzine is going really well at the moment. It's been really good having fans back in the stadium and been able to give out physical copies to people at the ground as well as our brilliant subscribers. But yeah, we're just really grateful for the ongoing support and appreciation for the Gooner. It's obviously been going for more than 3 decades now, and it's become somewhat of an institution. So it's a real privilege to be involved in that and see it going from strength to strength at the moment.
And let people know how they can follow you on Twitter, etc.
So it's Gooner Fanzine on Twitter, and you can, if you want to become a subscriber, you can head to our website, which is the onlinegooner.com. We've got a store section where you can buy a subscription, or if you're at a game, we've got plenty of sellers around multiple different places around the Emirates. So yeah, go and find one of them and get your Gooner.
And you know what's really good about it? It's got people like Dan on there, and it's also got like Ben who does his bit. But there's bits like people just like us, like Ruth Beck, who 2 or 3 years ago started drawing and painting, and she's got a very unique style. And if you go into Trevor's living room, it's everywhere. He doesn't even have pictures of his grandkids up anymore. He's just got Ruth Beck art everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many brilliant Arsenal creatives out there, and we want to give them the opportunity to show off their work. People like Ruth Beck who do some brilliant stuff. So it's always great to give them the platform to show off what they do.
Yeah. It's I don't mention Ruth because if I buy one more thing from Ruth Beck and put it on my wall, my missus is going to have. Dan, can you do us a favour, please? Can you check the records tomorrow? Because I think my subscription is due for renewal, mate. I'm not sure if it's. Do you drop out a reminder when the subscription?
To be honest, I'm in no way involved in the admin. I'm merely involved in production. So if you want to find out, Leif is the man to go to. Yeah, I can't help you with that, unfortunately, Trev.
It's on direct debit, I thought. I thought you paid on direct debit on your cards.
A lot of them have been moved over. There are some. Again, I'm not 100% sure on this. I'm in no way involved in the admin. That's not my calling card.
Right.
No, that's fine. Trevor, any final words before we close this off?
Yeah, do you know what, Ferg? I'm going to have me 10 pennies now, mate. Right, because it's been good tonight. It's been really good, and we've shown how people with differing opinions and views and how you just see the same thing, right? But you see it differently, can get on and actually have a conversation. And sometimes on social media, I see this incessant need to complain and moan about my great football club, right? And sometimes it annoys me, Fergus. Like, you get one day someone will say, we've got all this dross players that we're not got in our side that can't get a game. So we sell a load of them. And the following day they're moaning because we've sold them all, or we get a win. We have a great performance against Man City, albeit we lose, and Arteta's brilliant. And the next day we play another side and Arteta's rubbish, and these people, if they're going to be fans of the Arsenal for 40 years, they're probably going to spend 35 of them years moaning about us. Well, just remember, football's a game about enjoyment. We all watch it, right, to enjoy football. Even if you don't see even if you don't see good stuff on the field, still enjoy the day, going to the ground, meeting your mates, right? Don't spend all your life moaning and getting your bloody blood pressure up because we've not played well, or we've not bought a player, or we've not sold a player, or the beer's crap. Just enjoy the day. It's football. It's a hobby. That's what we do for us. So just stop moaning and enjoy it, and enjoy the day regardless of what happens. And I'm in a good mood because I've just booked my first European trip for 2 years. Not been to an away game in Europe since February 2020. We were away at Olympiacos, and if I'm honest, I don't watch much women's football. I don't know why. I just don't watch women's football. I'm not. That's not an insult to it. That's just me, what I do. But we have booked up. Me and my mate Terry, we've booked up. We're off to Wolfsburg at the end of March to watch the Arsenal ladies in the European Cup. And we're going to cheer them on, hopefully, to a big victory. I don't think I'll remember because I'll be drunk, but we are going to cheer them on to a good victory.
They don't have a 7-story nightclub in there, do they?
A what?
A 7-story nightclub in Wolfsburg.
I wouldn't have a clue, but if there is one there, I can assure you I'll probably find it, Fergus.
Okay, I'll let Donna know. On that note, you have been watching an Arsenal podcast by Arsenal fans, for Arsenal fans. Dan, Trevor, and all our guests who joined us tonight. Thank you very much. Really enjoyed it. Up the Arsenal.
You've been listening to Guns and Yellow Ribbons, an Arsenal podcast by Arsenal fans, for Arsenal fans. Follow us on Facebook at Guns and Yellow Ribbons and Twitter at Guns and Ribbons. And remember to rate and review us too.
We're still live, Fergus.